Okay, welcome everybody. I will call the school committee meeting for October 23rd to order. And we do have several boards with us, so I will let you guys call yourselves to order as well.
We'll call the Groton, the Dunstable Select Board meeting to order.
Call the Dunstable Advisory Committee to order.
Nope. Okay. All right. Well, I just want to welcome everybody here tonight.
Lacey, just 1 second.
Yeah.
So inadvertently, the Groton Select Board didn't get posted. So Matt and I are here as individuals. So just kind of a heads up that any questions or opinions we express are our own, and any kind of consensus we reach will have to go back to the board. So
Okay, that makes sense.
I know that'll make a huge difference tonight.
Yeah. Well, I thought before we get started, we do have several new faces at the table, so I thought we could just take a quick few minutes and just go around the room quickly, just say your name and what board or position you are here representing. So Clint, you want to start?
Clint Keeney. I'm here with the Dunstable Advisory Board.
Leo Tomatich, Dunstable Advisory Board.
Harold Simmons, Vice Chair, Dunstable Advisory.
Timothy Stewart, Advisory Board.
Jake Luan, Chair of the Advisory Board.
Kieran Meehan, Dunstable Select Board.
Leah Basbanes, Dunstable Select Board.
Jason Silva, Town Administrator, Dunstable.
Lori Safi, CPAC Rep.
Rohit Basine, School Committee.
Rosanna Casavecchia, School Committee.
Sherry Kersey, Director of Finance for the school district.
Kristen DeFrancisco, Assistant Superintendent of Schools.
Jeff Bruno, Superintendent of Schools.
Lacey McCabe, School Committee.
Yasmin Shima, School Committee.
Faye Rayner, School Committee.
Catherine Awa, School Committee.
Christina Andrioli, School Committee.
Bud Robertson, Chairman, Groton Finance.
Mary Linsky, Groton Finance.
Allison Manugian, Groton Select Board.
Matt Pisani, Groton Select Board.
Mark Haddad, Groton Town Manager.
Patricia Dufresne, Assistant Finance Director, Groton.
All right, thank you, everybody. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is to kind of begin our budget process and have both towns and the school district have the opportunity to provide each other, as well as the community, if anybody is watching, an overview of where we are at this point in our budget process, and provide kind of a forecast of where we're going and kind of our next steps. So we do have Mark and Jason here, and I believe that they are going to start with the town presentations, and then we'll move on to the school presentation. And then I would say that after all of the presentations are complete, we can move into a question and discussion period. If that sounds okay to everybody? All right, excellent. Jason, would you like to start?
I'd love to start. Hi, everybody. I'm Jason Silva, Town Administrator, for those I have not met. All right, there it is. So we've gone through a similar process as last year through the Advisory Board and Select Board. We've created a financial forecast for the next 5 years. Again, similar to what we did last year, we should stress that this is very much a preliminary forecast. This is not a budget. Things are definitely going to and will change as the year progresses. So I just want to put that out there. These are not definite numbers. These aren't numbers in concrete right now, but they are educated assumptions based on past history trends. So our first, if you want to move to the next slide. So this is essentially, I'm not going to go through every assumption that we've made, but this is a list of the assumptions we've made. Generally speaking, we've estimated 2% increase in salaries and 1% in general expenses, and it goes on from there. But the basis of the information that I'm going to present are these numbers. If you move to the next slide. And we can, if anyone has any questions in more detail, we can go back after that. So our revenue comes from three major sources. Our new revenue comes from three major sources. Our new growth, which is new construction, new development annually, We assume consistently $110,000 in new growth based on history. Our local receipts, we assume $750,000. Those are locally generated revenues through fees, permits, et cetera. And then our state aid, we assume a 2% increase. Free cash is not really a revenue stream. However, the town of Dunstable uses free cash to balance every year. So I included it on the revenue slide just so everyone understands that free cash is a source of funds that we use to balance. In this forecast in FY26, next fiscal, and FY27, we are planning an annual reduction of $100,000 of free cash to try to get away from the practice, similar to what the school committee and school district is doing, to try to get away from the practice of relying on free cash to balance our budget. Next slide. You can go. So this is a broad overview. What it really is trying to demonstrate is that our major source of revenue, shockingly, I know no one's going to be shocked by this, is real estate taxes. In 25, it's 86% of our revenue. In 26, it's forecasted to be 87% of our revenue. The increase in reliance is basically because we're reducing our free cash reliance annually. So you can move to the next slide. This is just a breakdown of the tax levy. We can grow 2.5, as everyone knows, plus new growth, and the excluded debt that voters have approved for specific capital projects. The upper graph is a comparison between the levy increase and our expenditure increase year over year. So you'll see in 25 our actual expenditure increase was less than our levy increase. Again, the cause for that is because we removed a portion of free cash, a significant actually portion of free cash from our revenue stream this fiscal year to balance. So that's the explanation for that. But you see in our forecast moving forward, there's a significant gap between our expenditure increase and expected levy increase. Next slide. This is just a description. I'm not going to go in great detail. State aid is a very small portion of our revenue stream. It's about 3% annually. And local receipts, as I said, are generally between $700,000 and $750,000 annually. Go to the next slide. This is just to give people a sense of where our local receipts come from. The significant portion of our local receipts come from motor vehicle excise. The next largest is building permits. Here's a breakdown of our free cash use and our free cash balance. You'll see on the left graph, our balance is higher than it's been since 2018, and that's because we were able to reduce, on the right side, the usage of free cash in FY25 by about $250,000. You can go. Next slide. So this is a breakdown of our annual expenses. Our major expense is the schools, 65% of our overall expenses. And the next highest is public safety at 12. Next slide. This is the forecasted increases. So generally on the town side, we're between 3.5% growth we're seeing in most areas. On the school side, we projected initially 7.57. We'll go over where it's at now, but it has been reduced slightly for FY26. This is a breakdown of our new available revenue to try to give us a sense on the town of Dunstable side on what we have to allocate as new revenue next year. So overall, the number is right around 400. It's $403,000. Because right now in our forecast we are planning to remove $100,000 of free cash, we need to reduce the available revenue by that amount. So it's around $300,000. And if you break it up, 65-35 school town, you'll see the breakdown of the allocation about $197,000 for the schools, which is a 2.36% increase overall. In the town, 106 for 2.33%. So these are the projected deficits for 26 through 30. For 26, where the forecast, when it was put together, estimated about a $540,000 deficit. And it grows from there. Just one thing to remember when you're looking at those numbers, because it does grow quite a bit over the years, is as you address it one year, the out years reduce accordingly as well. So if you're able to address it in 1 year, everything goes down. So since we compiled the forecast, there have been two substantial changes. One is our retirement assessment. Unfortunately, we projected a 5% growth in our retirement assessment year over year. We were just notified by Middlesex Retirement that we're expected to see a almost 31% increase, which is wildly more than what we anticipated. They have provided an option to spread that over 2 years. So we are looking at that option now, but it's still a much larger, it's about a 20% increase rather than a 31% increase. So that's having a significant impact on the town side. And then the Groton Dunstable Regional School District's assessment went from 757 to 7.24, which was a reduction of about $26,000. Go to the next slide. So this is with all that information taken into account. These are the projected deficits that we're carrying right now. So for the town side, $117,000, and for the Groton Dunstable Regional School District, $486,000. Next slide. This is another illustration just to make the point that the expenditure increases that we're seeing this isn't like adding on extravagant things. These are level service budgets we're talking about. So just the increase in expenditures is quite a bit more than the revenue increase that we're seeing year over year. Next slide. So just to give you a quick update on process. So we're ahead of where we were last year, fortunately. So our budget worksheets have gone out. We have budgets back, department budgets back. We have meetings set up already to start reviewing our department budgets. We've had a meeting of the TRICOM, and fortunately that work between the town of Groton, town Dunstable, and the school district is continuing, and that collaboration and communication is continuing, which is, I thought, really helpful last year, and I expect it to be the same this year. Also, capital requests. Our capital requests are in, and we have meetings. We're going to review those at the same meetings we do the budget. Next slide. The Select Board and Advisory Board have adopted new financial policies to put some structure in place on how we're dealing with our finances and what some target goals we have for reserves, free cash, financial planning, both on capital and our budget. So I think these financial policies put a stronger framework in place for us to follow to make sure that we're paying attention to things like our stabilization fund, to make sure we're paying attention to our capital and funding those things accordingly. Next slide. I just wanted to point some of this stuff out for the masses watching this at home. So we are doing what we can to control costs and pursue revenue sources. So one of the things we're in the process of doing now is looking at municipal aggregation program to help stabilize and potentially lower electricity rates for residents. We know we're having a hard time saving them money on the tax bill, but we're looking at other ways to save them money, and this is hopefully, if not save money, at least provide some stability in their electric bills. We did go through a process with the Select Board to look at our municipal fee structures, and we did make adjustments on our municipal fees. We have a special town meeting on the 18th of November. One of the things on the warrant is to pursue authorization to locate a cell tower on the water tank. We put an RFP out. We received one bid to do that, and so that will be a revenue generator for us. We are continuing work with master plan implementation, land use, and economic development committees, and so that work continues. And the school district will talk about this in much greater detail and much greater knowledge, but we have been part of conversations. They're calling it Project 211, I guess, but it's really, really important and critical conversations around the Chapter 70 formula and how districts like the Groton Dunstable Regional School District. It's called Project 211 because there are 211 districts in the Commonwealth that are going through the exact same scenario as we are every year. And so we are not alone, and there's really important conversations happening with that group. There was a kickoff meeting that a lot of us here were a part of, and to me that's like, if not the most critical, one of the most critical issues that we're facing is the fact that the Chapter 70 formula is not keeping up with just cost of living and inflationary increases that we're all experiencing. I think that's it. Got anything else? Yeah? No? Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Mark, you ready?
Yep. Thank you. I'm going to be a lot shorter than Jason. Dunstable is actually ahead of Groton in the budget planning this year, so congratulations, Jason. Great job. The Groton Select Board and Finance Committee will be meeting together on Tuesday, October 29th, and that's their annual budget kickoff meeting in which they'll provide the town manager and the finance team with guidance to start the budget process. On a positive note, the charter amendment that Groton passed last year to give the town 30 more days to put the budget together passed. So instead of having to put a budget out on December 31st, I now can do it on January 31st. So that gives us more time to work with the school district and the town of Dunstable to to continue with the collaboration. I agree with Jason 100%. The collaboration that started last year is continuing this year, and I'm excited about that, as Jason is. So I'm going to just give a brief overview of what's going on in Groton right now. So these are some of the challenges that Groton is facing for next year. On the plus side, our pension budget is going to be level funded, so that's some positive news to Groton. Our health insurance, we got together we joined Maya last year for health insurance, and they are telling us that we should probably look at about a 7% increase. The positive about that is last year at this time, we received a 13% increase when we were part of the Minuteman, the Neshoba Health Group. So that's some positive news for the town of Groton. So that's about a $151,000 increase in health insurance. A big question mark going into next year is our union negotiations. All 6 of our union contracts are up next year. So we'll be sitting down with our unions. We've already started meeting with some of them. But that's going to be a challenge with regards to the budget for next year for planning. The biggest impact and our biggest concern is the closure of the Neshoba Valley Medical Center and its impact on the fire department. We've gone from 8-minute travel time and a total of a 30-minute turnaround trip to Neshoba Valley Medical Center on a normal average ambulance run to a 24-minute trip and a 2-hour turnaround to get our firefighters back in town. That's 4 times what we're doing right now. It is a major problem, and it is something that we're going to have to address in fiscal year 26. There's no hope that Neshoba Valley Medical Center is going to open, and we need to worry about the way we protect our residents with regards to emergency medical services. One of the things we're looking at is expanding our fire department and doubling the manpower within the fire department, or person power within the fire department, which would go from 8 full-time firefighters to 16 full-time firefighters. That is about $1 million increase or more for the department. That you can't even deal with that in a regular operating budget. Anything having to do with that fire department will be in an override situation for the town of Groton. We're just starting that process, but it is something that we're facing next year, and it is a major problem and a major challenge for the town of Groton. The preliminary assessment from the Groton Dunstable Regional School District is estimated to rise in Groton by 6.84%, or an increase of $1.8 million. You'll see that number is very important when we go to the next slide, when you see what we're anticipating for new revenues for next year. Our tax levy increase, we're looking to see about a $1.2 million increase. Our estimated receipts, we really over budgeted them last year to try to make up extra revenue, and so we're being a little bit more conservative with them this year because we missed a couple of them last year. We fortunately had a good year on investment income, which softened the blow, but that's still a major problem. We're only looking at a $54,000 increase. And Jason, you are much more optimistic with the state at 2%. I'm only looking at 1%. So our total revenue increase is $1.2 million, or anticipated increase about $1.25 million. Obviously, the Groton-Dunstable increase alone exceeds that number, which puts us into sort of a difficult position going into next year. So the way we look at the distribution, Dunstable does it 65-35. Groton is 60% school and 40% municipal. So that would be, if you divided those revenues, that would set aside $755,708 for the school district and $503,000 for the municipal budget, if we did that straight split on revenues. If you go to the next slide, currently, without considering that staffing level to the fire department, we're looking at an increase of about $445,000. That is very rough. I haven't gotten guidance from the Finance Committee. I was just in the Select Board. I just did some preliminary numbers, looking at trends over the last couple of years. So the departments haven't even given me their budgets yet, but it's looking like 2.6% increase, or about $443,000. That would leave $816,000 for the school district, or an increase of 3%. It's still $1 million less than what the preliminary estimate from the school district is for fiscal year 26. On the final slide that I have for you, I tried to get away last year, and I applaud Jason for doing a 5-year outlook. I think 5 years is dangerous, and I didn't want to put those kind of numbers up there, so I sort of shrunk ours back to 3 years. And if you look going into next year, we're looking at about a $750,000 overall deficit when you look at the school district versus the town budget and what we're anticipating for increases. And then, of course, as Jason pointed out, it will increase to 2.6 in 27 and 4.6 in 28. The important message that I think the residents and everybody has to have is everything that we said last year relative to the budget impact of not passing an override has come to fruition. We still have deficits in the town, and I know we're going to hear from Jeff and Sherry right now on the major impacts that lack of override had, how bad it hurt the school district. Nothing has changed. A year did not make the problem go away. We're still facing the same challenges next year that we faced in fiscal year 25. I look forward to working with the school district and the town of Dunstable and of course, the Groton Select Board and Finance Committee as we grapple with these. I'm very excited that the TRICOM is continuing, and I think we're off to a good start, and I think we'll continue to work collaboratively as we try to address these issues. But we're in tough shape next year. Thank you, Lacey.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Bruno and Sherry, you guys want to take it from here?
How's that? Gonna break the mic. Okay, we're gonna ping pong this a little bit between Sherry and myself, but I wanted to start really doing two things this evening. First, understanding and just providing some slides on the budget impact to the district as a whole in FY25, and then previewing FY26 and where we are, snapshot really where we are as of right now in the budget process. So those are the three areas, as I just mentioned. First, the budget impact of FY25, and I really split that into kind of three main bullets: academic, student support, and special education, and then preliminary budget development. So how are we meeting student needs? And then talking, Jason mentioned it a bit in his presentation as well, looking at funding and revenue through Chapter 70 and the impact that has locally and with our town assessments, both in Groton and Dunstable, and then just outline what's next. So just first, these were the 25 positions that were cut as we opened the school year this fall. And I kind of listed out the positions, and what you can see as you're going through them is all departments and all schools, all grade levels, K to 12 were affected. So we had special education teachers throughout the district, counselors, as well as content area and classroom teachers, administrative assistants, really every curriculum coordinators. It was tough, and it's definitely impacted how we operate and ultimately, obviously, how we meet the needs of our students. As far as the academic impact, just to outline, math intervention was cut, so we actually have our district-wide math supervisor taking on math intervention duties at Swallow Union. Floro has one-time, full-time math interventionist there. The groups, this is another one, I mean, we're just underway in the school year, so we're continuing to identify groups and students who need intervention. So this will, the impact of this cut will, I think, continue to be felt, obviously, as we go through the school year. Library technology teachers in both Floro and Swallow Union were cut. We had high school social studies, math, and ELA teachers cut at the high school level, which has impacted class size, but more importantly, in my view, particularly at the high school, we're really at the edge of not being able to offer a breadth of studies that we need for a comprehensive, high-performing high school. So the class size, as I'm going to show in an upcoming slide, was definitely impacted in all buildings. As far as curriculum coordination, really stressing the need for all of our educators to be part of how we lead and how we evolve as educators. We've worked to partially restore some of the stipends for teacher leaders to particularly at the high school level, department heads and teacher leaders, so that we can maintain our program of studies. As far as health, wellness, and social emotional learning, lost a district social worker, and then almost 2 full nursing positions, which is most severely impacted our middle school and also Florence Roach at the new school, additional 120 students in the new building, and we had to close the health center in the north building, 7 and 8, so 7th and 8th grade students need to go to our Marion Stoddard building, 5th and 6th grade, for the nurse. And then middle school counseling as well, losing the one counselor now means that our 8th grade students have basically split into 3 different counselors taking on basically 3 additional grade levels and then a third of the 8th grade. And just also to point out that there was some significant cuts the year previous at the high school, both to a guidance counselor and an assistant principal, which obviously impacted how we run and manage and support our students. Special education services and student support, the team chair positions that were cut impacts all 3 of our schools, or all 4 of our schools rather, K through 12. Special education teachers, which I had mentioned earlier, a district social worker, reading interventionist, and then a BCBA in terms of supporting our behavioral needs and assessment and supporting our teachers with our students as well. And then this slide just kind of outlines through the district, kind of looking at class size from last year to this year. So Florence Roach and Swallow Union overall, if you take all the grade levels and homerooms together, there hasn't been a huge impact in terms of increasing class size, but within each grade level cohort, there have been some changes. Also recognizing that 120 students moved from Swallow Union to Florence Roach, which obviously impacts the number of classrooms that we have, and it's a little more challenging to try and balance our classrooms to ensure that we have appropriate class sizes. I can tell you the 2 kindergarten classrooms at Swallow Union, 23 and 25, is very high for our kindergarten students. The good news is we have such talented teachers and support. You know, we're making the best of it, but The class sizes at the elementary level are really at their limits, even for the sizes of the rooms. As far as the middle school averages, take into account that those are basically averages of all of our sections, core academics, and then also IAs. So in middle school, I mean, there's probably over 200, 250 sections of classes that you're averaging from. We have some chorus class sizes that are in the one in particular I was just in today, that is 72 kids. And some PE and IA classes that are in the high 30s, low 40s. That's really impacted the overall average at the middle school from last year to this year, about just under 22 on average to about a little over 23. When you take into account all of the classes, that's a straight average. And the high school is actually an average of 2 students per classroom. And again, there's a much more diverse number of kids across different classes depending on what you're looking at the high school, but the averages have gone up significantly just from last year to this year, which is concerning. Just some common themes. The staff is definitely feeling as if they're stretched thin, taking on additional responsibilities and tasks outside of their area of expertise. Many are feeling like they're being asked to do more with less. Our counseling caseloads, as I was mentioning, have really increased, and then our nursing coverage, particularly at the middle school, has been a challenge, but it's also been felt throughout the schools. Our class size is really at its limit, in my estimation, K through 12. And again, I mentioned, the number of electives that we're able to offer our students, and then also course offerings, including some advanced placement classes, we're right on the edge of really, if we were to cut any more or lose any more classroom instruction or teachers qualified to teach, advanced placement classes and more advanced coursework, it's really going to impact the pathways that we need to have available to all of our high school kids. All right, so we're going to downshift into FY26 here and talk about where we are in terms of preliminary budget development. We're early on in our process, and so I'm going to turn it over to Sherry a little bit. We're going to talk about budget guidance and where we are for this year.
Okay, thank you. The school committee has already voted on and given us our marching orders for our budget guidance, and these are the points that they wanted us to focus on this year. We've already started talking about the sport fee with a family cap. We talked about that at the last school committee meeting. We will revisit kindergarten fees and seeing if we can incorporate some of those costs back into the general fund to reduce the fee to the families. Looking at a comprehensive five-year capital plan with the help of getting a facilities assessment so we can get a real handle on what our building needs are going to be for the next 5 years. The operational audit that we've talked about since we settled this last budget, that is going to be out to bid, and we'll come back with some data on efficiencies. The review of the regional agreement, which again, it is written right in the regional agreement that every 5 years it will be reviewed. This is the 5th year, so we will be doing that. And to continue to reduce our reliance on E&D. And I think all of you may have gotten the email that our E&D did get certified already, so we're already ahead of the game on that. So we know how much that we have available and can use now. For the general public, it's like 1.226, 1,226,000. Here's some of the drivers that we use to develop our 5-year plan. Collective bargaining agreements, we'll talk about that alone in this next slide. Again, the health, dental, life insurance, we have a 10% health insurance increase built into the preliminary numbers. We'll see how that comes out. Our Middlesex retirement is a little bit higher as well this year, or expected in 26. And we're probably going to do the method that Jason was talking about, where we're going to smooth the 2-year bump evenly over 2 years. I do have in there OPEB at $20,000, which again, we know that is really a placeholder if the 20,000 is needed. In other places that we can discuss that, but all things considered, keeping things equal, that assumption is in there. For contracted services, we went up 2%. The cleaning contract, because it's a bubble year, is like 17%. That will be part of the audit for efficiencies to see if that is still on track to still be more efficient than having our own. Student support and evaluation can range anywhere from 2 to 40% depending on what services are being required of IPs. A professional development, again, we either went up 0% or 2%. It does not include at this point adding back the curriculum coordinators. Again, this is level services, what I was building, and at this point that was level. For substitutes, you know that we have been trending higher, 10% I kept in there to keep up with that trend. Supplies, 2%. Transportation, our contracts were 3.3. Our special ed is a 23% increase. It's part of the increase on that is we have more students going out of district and more special ed students. So it's kind of a combination of the price and where the students are going. And our homeless transportation doubled. We do as much as we can to cost share with surrounding schools, but that is an area that has been growing. Out of district tuitions, in looking at the placements of what we currently have in the inflation is about an 8.5 to 10% increase. Utilities going up 2 to 5%. Electricity 10%. And some of that is because of the Florence Roach building, just having more square footage. We're making allowances for that. And then $50,000 more expense at the high school for water because we're going to be tied into town water, hopefully, by 2026, which wasn't a cost that we had before. An update on our collective bargaining. So one of the major things that we talked about last year is this was what we were working on. We have come to an agreement with the teachers union, and so the items that are tied to a financial impact. On a good note, the membership agreed over the 3-year contract for a 5% shift in cost on the premium, so they'll be picking up. Not this year, but next year they'll pick up an additional 3%, and the year after that an additional 2%. So that will save the school district over $500,000 during the duration of this agreement. The salary increases totaled 9% for over the 3 fiscal years, which is a 3% each year. Longevity incentive was updated. The hourly rate for hours that are beyond their contract was adjusted, and that is applied to like when they do extra PD off hours or if they do sub coverage. And then the substitute rate, the way that they were, if a teacher had a prep period and we needed a substitute, they could elect to use their prep time to help substitute in a class. And after they accumulated so much time, they got their per diem rate. Now, their per diem rate is based on where they fall on the contract so it could be anywhere from $300 to over $500 for the sub. And that was a cost driver in why our substitute rates were going up so high. So we were able to put in, instead of going for per diem, it's going to be at the $40 an hour rate. So this will save the district money as well as a strategy to do that. So just wanted to give you that update. So what else is included in here? Going back to the directive from the school committee, I have incorporated a third of the kindergarten expenses that are now collected with fees, which is $125,000 this year. and then reduced, so that's on the expense side, expenses go up, reduce the reliance of E&D as a revenue source from $500,000 to $400,000, so revenues went down. So that right there is a $225,000 swing in a level service. In updating the 5-year projection calculation, so that was expenses. Now we're on to revenue. For our state aid, I have included $30 a student, which has been the typical. I have another slide for that would show that. Chapter 71, which is transportation reimbursement, going up about 3%. The charter reimbursement, I do a 5-year average because it fluctuates. It goes up and down every year. So hit it at the 5-year. And level funded our Medicaid reimbursement. For our local resources, kept the Peter Toomey rent the same. Interest income, I did again over a 5-year average. Miscellaneous revenue that we get is $10,000. And again, E&D was reduced down to $400,000. Just to show you how much giving a dollar value to how minimal our aid from Chapter 70 increases every year. You can see that in FY19 we got $30 a student, the same in FY20. In FY21, we didn't get it in Chapter 70, we got ESSER money instead. And so I wanted to make sure that I indicated that. Again, in 22, it was $30 a student. In 23 and 24, it was $60. When they were developing the 25 budget, they went back down to $30. That is where it was when we were certifying our budget and the towns were passing our budgets at town meeting. And then at the end of July, when the state landed on their budget, we are getting $104 per student, which is great. However, our budget was not built using that extra money as a revenue source, so there's no expenses tied to that. So that money will roll into E&D at the end of the year. But again, a good part of that is the 104 mark will now become our baseline for hold harmless. So we'll see an increase there.
So Sherry shared the recent history, and then we decided to go back even further. And so there's a whole lot of data on this slide, and this one, and I think the graph that's next will kind of understand why we put this together. But this slide, which is straight from the DESE website, really outlines the history of Chapter 70 that will actually go back all the way to the beginning of ed reform in '93. But the numbers that jumped out at me, and this just goes back to fiscal year '08, is the Chapter 70 amount in fiscal year '08 was $10,757,000 roughly. Our Chapter 70 aid in fiscal year '24 was $11,261,903. So virtually the same, just a very slight increase over a period of 15, 16 years. Whereas the required local contribution for Groton, Dunstable went from roughly 12 million to 22 million over that same time span. So the increased costs associated with education and funding schools has certainly fallen a lot more on local sources of revenue than state subsidy. And then this graph really, I think, drives that point home. So the orange bars that you can see here, and this is going back to fiscal year 1993, so this is a little more than 30 years worth of data. The orange bars represent our state's subsidy for Groton Dunstable. The blue bars represent the foundation budget. And then the dotted line there represents required net school spending minimum in order to adhere to state law. So some of this is, as Jason was mentioning, as part of his, this Project 211 is really looking at, there are actually 229 districts in FY25, that are in this hold harmless state. So what that means is the state subsidy funds is regardless of your enrollment, you will receive the same amount of aid as you received last year plus X amount of dollars per student, which is what Sherry was referencing. So there are almost 230 districts across the Commonwealth that have essentially outgrown, right, the funding formula. And so regardless of how things occur, those associated costs, as you can see, just are now, that burden essentially is being shifted much more onto the local assessments. You want to add anything? Did I get any of that right?
Good job. Okay, so looking at our current budget and what percentage of each revenue source is of our total budget. I'm not going to read the numbers, you can see them. Just want to make sure that it's noted that the amount that it has here for Groton does not include the $619,000 gift amount. But Chapter 70 is 23% of our budget, and pretty much that percentage goes down every year because the Dunstable and Groton amounts go up. And then everything else is pretty small. Those are our three big revenue sources. So after we updated the 5-year projection, we gave the towns their assessments, their preliminary, very preliminary assessments, with the increases being to Dunstable 7.24 and to Groton 6.84. That doesn't mean our budget grew at that same amount. Our budget is actually increased overall to 6.9. So what if the towns don't have the funding for the assessment? If no other revenue can be identified to fill the need, then we would, in order to balance a budget, we would need to reduce our estimated preliminary budget by $2.1 million. I think in the estimates that Laura was giving last year, it was about 1.8. So I think this is pretty in line where we thought we were going to fall. So if all we had was a balanced budget, what does that look like for increases? You can see that the increase from Dunstable would be about $90,000 or 1.1%. The Groton assessment, because it's tied by a formula in the regional agreement, the maximum they would be able to give is $203,000, which is a 0.75% increase, and our budget at that point would only be increasing by 2.4. And I don't know if I have this. I don't. One other thing I just wanted to share, that with us not getting the override last year, our operating budget actually only increased by 0.91% in 25. So what's next? On Monday, we do have our worksheets out to our principals and directors. They're due back to me on Monday. We have a meeting with all of us, and Jeff and myself, to discuss their what other goals that they may have and things, resources that we may need in order to reach goals that are in our district goals, our district improvement plans, their school improvement plans. And again, we will address like what is happening in the classrooms now, and if there's something that they want to swap expenses for, if they need a different type of teacher or nurse or guidance counselor. But we're going to have that discussion as a group, not in each individual, so that as a district, we're going to be talking about, everybody's going to have a knowledge of what's going on in every school, and work together to try to give the best budget we can. So what else is going on is, as we've said many times, we're going to have regional agreement consulting coming in. We'll be working with Left Field to do an MEP assessment to help with a 5-year capital plan. And we have the operational audit that will come with recommendations, and we will communicate out those results. And that's what's happened to date. Is we had a meeting, just a preliminary on August 28th, so that we knew we were still all going to be supporting one another and sharing information. The school district has approved its guidance with a timeline. We're meeting tonight. A good thing, like Mark had said, the town charters give us another month, so that'll help because the state numbers usually come out, I think, the third week in July. I'm sorry, in January or July. But so hopefully we will have stronger numbers when we have to ask for certification.
Yeah, and I would just add on that meeting on the 29th, I mean, we're really looking line by line. In every school, we're looking at personnel, we're looking at absolutely everything to make sure that we're meeting our students' needs and being very, very specific and looking at all different ways that we can make the best use of the resources that we have.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff and Sherry. And thank you to Mark and Jason for being here and presenting all of that information. I think that it's very helpful, I think, as we start this next budget cycle, that we're all aware of really what's going on in each of the towns in the district. I think that there are some common themes in terms of the challenges that we're facing, but there's also unique challenges for each town and the district as well. So with that, I would like to open it up for discussion and questions.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Sherry, what was the fiscal year 24 E&D certified at? It's 1.2 this year. Do you remember off the top of your head what last year's was?
I can have that in 1 minute.
Okay. So what I'm thinking is that $104 that you have, which is substantially over what you budgeted for, that's going to flow to free cash, would that allow the school committee to reconsider taking or reducing E&D this year for fiscal year 26 and not weaning off it? Because you're going to have extra E&D in that account, so we could probably use that to help offset the increases to Dunstable and Groton in terms of the budget next year. Does that make sense? No? Yes?
Yes.
Even if there was some thought given to using it for capital to offset our capital costs to the school district.
That helps. I'm sorry, Jason and I going back and forth. I apologize. That helps Dunstable because you use your operating money.
Oh, you use a different
I use free cash and stuff like that. So that doesn't really help Groton. Okay. Using it to offset the operating helps Groton.
Got it.
Thank you.
So I think I understand your question, and I think it's definitely something that could be looked at. It would be something that I think the school committee would have to take up and deliberate on and discuss, but I certainly understand that suggestion.
Thank you.
Yes?
Mark, to answer your question, the E&D for last year was $1,459,455.
So it went down a little bit. Okay. Thank you, Sharon.
Yeah, and I will tell you, I think in 23, we ended the year with a surplus or unspent expenses of $61,000 out of a $47 million budget. This year we ended up with $16,000. So every year we're getting like that. That's
Understood.
Essentially zero.
Understood.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So, last year there was a lot of effort put into getting information out and informing residents and such. And I think we were pretty clearly told by our colleagues and residents in town that they don't want an override or their taxes to go up substantially. And I can't help but appreciate all the hard work we're all putting in, but nothing's really changed. So what plan is there? We're in the same conversation circle that we were last year. And I don't know if you're going to change the minds of voters and residents and citizens because it's the same page that they were given last year.
Yep, no, I hear your point, and you're not wrong. This is exactly where we were this time last year, and so I think, any of my colleagues can kind of weigh in, or anybody from the school side, but I think from my perspective, I think, the school district is doing a few things that we said we would do, which is, number one, the operational audit. That's where we have somebody come in from the outside to kind of do an analysis of everything and make recommendations for where we can save money. I think, just a second, Roseanne, I see you. I think that, we're looking at, as Jeff mentioned, he's going to be going line by line and kind of analyzing our budget to look for any efficiencies that can be found internally. So we are trying to do whatever we can, but the reality is with our Chapter 70 funding remaining stagnant, the problem is really larger than making adjustments internally. It really, at some point, there is going to need to be some kind of revenue that's derived from somewhere else, because truly this isn't an issue solely with just that we can solve through cuts, if that makes sense. So, anybody can weigh in and offer their own perspectives there, but that's kind of my 2 cents. And I did hear Mark and Jason kind of share some similar strategies. Jason talked about what is going on in Dunstable with respect to the electricity, trying to save residents some money in other ways as well. So, I think your point is very well taken, and I think we have a lot of work to do here. But I think that's sort of like, this is the start of it.
Yeah, I mean, I know I was famous for the meeting last year, the year prior, where I said, what's the one page that I can give to somebody at Dunkin' Donuts in Dunstable?
Yeah.
Like, give me a one-page piece of paper to tell them why it's so important.
Yep.
And that type of informational blitzkrieg is the only way to get people to change their mind and show them how valuable the school really is to their property values, to their children they don't know in town that they just see giving trick-or-treat candy to. Like,
yep.
It's the only way to change minds. We're all suckers for Instagram and social media, so it'd be great to just keep marketing.
I absolutely agree. So one thing I think that we're doing, this isn't related to the budget, but at our last school committee meeting, we approved as a school committee a new communication plan. So we are going to be doing, I think, quite a bit more in the way of like community outreach. Like we're going to have monthly office hours in both towns. We're going to be doing our regular newsletter. We're going to be, I'll share the plan with everybody just so you can kind of get a sense of what we're doing. But I think the whole point behind it is sort of that, just to like let the community know what's going on, like the good and the bad, and hopefully shed some light on really what that need is. Rosanna, I think, did you have?
It was just more of an observation. I think, I know you're questioning whether or not like override, not override, but we were trying to do a 3-year, so it was.
Do what?
We were looking at doing a 3-year override, so that in itself was really hard for people to swallow. So that as we explore the different options, and if it is an override, like what that would look like. Do you know what I mean? So that it's more palatable, if that's the case. But I don't think that we're there yet. But I think that was a big, challenge, and people trying to figure out and navigate, what that all meant to them, and even dollar-wise at the end, the tax, what they would be potentially taxed on, and so forth. So do you know what I mean? It was just a lot.
The vote wasn't even close, and I took it was a harsh lesson because I thought it was going to pass in Dunstable. Fundamentally, I thought it was going to work, and it wasn't even close. It was even less close in Groton.
So that's a great point you bring up, and what I think now, the one-page tear sheet, that was a great way to put it. Like, there was so much information going out. Give me the lowdown. I think the difference now is we know how it's been impacted, how the failed override has been impacted. There are specific concrete examples. Keeping privacy in mind, maybe that's something we start looking at, saying, you know what, when we said no to the override and you said live within your means, you can figure it out. I think the big difference now is we know at the building levels like what problems have occurred and how the kids have been affected, how the staff has been affected. Like I think that's probably what we focus on with the communication as well. It's like, okay, you didn't want to pass the override before because there was an unknown. Well, now we know. This is the issue. This is how the kids are being affected. Whether you have kids in the district or not, there is an effect. There'll be an effect on the towns and how they're looked at from a reputation standing as well. When people are thinking about moving in and potentially bringing those revenues into town, if the schools aren't strong, then they're going to look elsewhere because it's not cheap to live in Groton or Dunstable either, right? So I think that's what we need to start focusing on too, is getting with the building administrators and saying, okay, what issues, what complaints, and kind of putting that into a one-pager and saying, this is why we need them. This is why we need the money. So I think that would be the key difference from before to now. We know that it's happening in the buildings.
Yeah, I would just say with that sort of the mindset of going into it, like, all right, last year we were looking for a 3-year override, and that didn't work. If we were to proceed forward, or at least present to the public that we're going for a single-year override, I guess that one-page tear sheet would also to say, we're going to cover you for 1 year. How are you going to make this difference so you're not coming back next year and the year after for those similar requests? So it has to include some level of change, right? I understand we are looking into a lot of different things associated with the requests that we heard from last year, but if we go to a 1 year, it's not like the problem disappears in year 2. As we look at 3 to 5 year projections, we're going to need this year after year. And I think the voters, they spoke pretty loudly, like Karen mentioned, that they want to see something that lives closer within our means. And then how do we do that? And then what does that look like? And providing that on a one-page would be a good thing, but what does that say right now? The 1 year might work. We might be able to get it through 1 year, but they're going to want to know, what are we going to do different so you're not coming back next year?
That's an awesome point, Jake. And I think on that operational audit, I think I don't know yet because it hasn't come back. We don't know what they're going to come back with. But I think that that's something that could potentially be exactly what you're talking about, that what we're talking about is the budget for the next fiscal year, but any kind of recommendations that an operational audit is going to give would be for more of a long-term savings, right? So if we went for an override and we're successful, it's almost like it bridges that gap, hopefully. And so I think, thank you for bringing that up, because I think that's a really good point, that it's not just about how do we address the needs this year, but really long-term, what are we doing? But I think it's also important to point out, and somebody at this table made this point last year, and I want to say it was Bud, that we aren't going to be in a good place to be able to make those long-term adjustments and plans if we can't stabilize. And if we're consistently having to make reductions year after year after year, we never get to a place of feeling like we're stable and now we can make some long-term, real concrete plans.
That sounds like Bud.
I think so. I want to say it was Bud. Allison?
Yeah, so I think it's important for those of us particularly who don't have kids in the district anymore to really translate some of those cuts and things that you guys are seeing that are maybe intuitive to folks in education into what the community really would understand. And then I'm hoping, I don't know whether anyone can do it off the top of their head or if more information can come to us in terms of kind of the 3 assessments, the regional, operational audit, and then facilities assessment, to understand where they're at right now. Like, have they gone out to bid, and then when would we anticipate having kind of some data? Not that I'm anticipating any one of those to provide, an answer for us, but.
Go ahead, Shiv. So with the regional agreement, I'm talking with a representative from MARS, Mass Association of Regional Schools, to make sure that we are on the same page with the scope of what we're asking them to do, and how many meetings and in-person, Zoom, and whatnot. So that will be shortly, that we'll have that finalized, and then we'll get out to see who wants to be on that board. Well, not a board, but committee. And then the operational audit is going to be out on goods and services in 2 weeks. So, and I believe the same, it'll be advertised locally as well, but I have a couple people that, businesses that I could send it to off the top of my head.
Sherry, and if I just interrupt right there, on the regional agreement piece, would the goal be to be before the Dunstable and Groton town meetings next spring?
I think it depends if the initial meetings, when they're going through, if there's any piece of it that really needs more discussion, or is, it's meant to be a cleanup, but I think that I'm thinking in one particular piece we might have more discussions on.
Okay.
So depending on if we can work that out and come to a yeah.
Thank you.
But it sounds like just at a timing perspective, none of those will truly be back as the 26 budget is crafted.
Correct. Right, because any change to the regional agreement will have to go to town meetings this year.
Right, but it sounds like we won't even have that information to craft next year's budget at this, by January.
I think actually once they come in, they start the operational audit. I think it takes about 2 months for the time that they come in and we give them the information that they ask for, the data, and work with them, that they would have a preliminary report back to us probably by February. I know we're certifying at that point, but
yeah, I mean, I think that was sort of what I was alluding to a minute ago, that sort of represents a long-term cost savings, not necessarily something that would have an impact on next year's numbers. I mean, depending on what they come back with, I mean, it's possible that they have something that would be quick and easy to address, but it's also possible that the kinds of recommendations that they would make would take some time to really implement. Because I don't think anybody in the town, although everybody wants to see some real cost savings, I don't think anybody wants major decisions to be rushed or to be done, you know what I mean, in a quick, just to get it done quickly, right? We would want to take some time to make sure that it's done responsibly. And so some of those recommendations I would expect would be of that nature, right? So it would represent a long-term savings, but not necessarily something that could be put into place by like next school year.
Right, I think my thinking was more in terms of in attempting to sell a one-year override with a one-page flyer as opposed to the 3-year override. You know, one of the things that we heard over and over and over was that folks wanted to see these done. Not necessarily that we would be able to implement things next year, but we would have some data to look at least. So without that, we're still, again, it's not an update from last year's messaging in any way, which is hard.
No, but I do, I mean, based on what Sherry said, you know, if we have something in February, although it doesn't mean that we can change our numbers for that budget, it does mean that the voters are seeing that information and they are aware of the recommendations and they are aware of that discussion that would be having, you know, going on at school committee. Like, these are things that we can be considering going forward, right? So it's not as though that information comes in and then nothing happens with it, you know, that people don't know about it.
I hope so.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I would just say, too, usually initiatives or efforts to reduce spending come with difficult decisions that are most likely going to be unpopular. So the result of the audit, which is very important, will probably have a lot of things in there that people aren't going to want to jump up and down about and embrace immediately. So so really thinking through how it's going to be communicated and even the process to get to a final report, I think, is going to be important.
What is the school committee, like, so tonight's goal was an introduction of sort of the situation we're all faced with. What's the takeaway? Like, what was the thought? Like, is it to begin spreading positive energy to try to get a vote passed, or is it to begin like discussions about what a one-year override looks like? Like what was the thought here?
Well, I mean, I would expect probably everybody's going to take away something slightly different. What I am hoping to take away from tonight is that we all have a clearer picture of what we're looking at for the next several months of our lives and going forward into next budget cycle. That we all have kind of an understanding that the lines of communication are open and will remain open. So any questions that any of you have, I would encourage you to kind of be reaching out and asking those so that we can really have a clear picture of like what is everybody looking for from us? What do we need maybe from you guys? Do we may have questions for you or vice versa, right? So I think that as Mark and Jason both alluded to in their presentations, we did a lot in the way of increasing communication and collaboration last year, and I would like to continue that. So I think if nothing else happens after tonight, if anybody takes anything out of this room, I would hope that it would be that, just that those lines of communications remain open. We have a lot of work to do. I know really everybody at this table is committed to doing the best thing for our communities and for our district, and that may look different, and we may have some challenging conversations, but I think we're all in agreement that we all have good intentions here and we want to work together, so that's my takeaway.
Thank you.
Mark, I just have a quick question for you regarding with the closing of Neshoba and your anticipation of potentially having to hire 16 more firemen.
8 more.
8, I'm sorry, 8.
Okay. Don't scare the residents too much in Groton.
I'm like, I don't know where I got 16. 8 more. Would you also anticipate needing more vehicles?
No.
No.
No, we have 2 ambulances. The problem is when one of the ambulances is out of town for as long as it is, and we don't get call firefighters to come back, we have to depend on full-timers to get that second ambulance out the door. And that's the problem we're having right now. A 30-minute turnaround, it wasn't a big deal. A 2-hour turnaround, it is a big deal. And that's the issue that we're grappling with right now. And
so with regards to information, the information that the school is sending out, just like Rohit suggested and Lacey and anybody else on school committee, this for me was very good information because I don't think that, I shouldn't say that I don't think that, but there may be opportunities for the community to hear these kinds of things, to know that potentially if there is discussion around override, do you know what I mean? Because the town, which provides the safety of the citizens of the town. This is a big thing, do you know what I mean? So the impact of the hospital closing has not just in that capacity, but services, families traveling farther and so forth. So economically for people who live in the community, now they're trying to navigate things differently. Am I making sense? So when they, if there are discussions around potential overrides, we clearly, Dr. Bruno and the rest of the team, are identifying like what we've done and the big steps that we've taken, as a school committee. But the town as well, both towns, do you know what I mean, are making some really a strong commitment to try to figure it out, and yet you have your own set of challenges that you're up against. I just think that it's really important that the town knows both,
Just to follow up on the question that Karen asked before on what to get out of tonight's meeting, I think that the fact that we put the issues back out on the table again so that it gets regurgitated and it gets out to the public. One of the things that happened year over year is in past years, the school committee would always somehow rescue the district. And they'd say we need more money, and then the money would somehow appear. That did not happen last year. And I think everything that was said to the public last year has come to fruition. The district made some significant cuts, cut back on their operational costs. And now we're facing those same challenges for another year. And I think we really have to drive that point home. And now Groton is facing an additional challenge, as Rosanna just said, within our fire department. So I think getting the word out and continuing to get that word out to the residents is important. And I want to continue to have the TRICOM meet so that we continue to keep those lines of communication between Groton, Dunstable, and the school district together. So, thank you.
Okay.
Did I have the last word? That usually doesn't happen. I like that.
Anyone else have any other questions, comments, requests?
Thank you.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for being here. I know it's busy time of year and a lot going on. It's not easy to get here, but I do appreciate this opportunity to kind of be able to sit down in one place at one time and share information. And I hope that will continue. And like I said, I think should anybody have any questions, Dr. Bruno's very. I put you on the spot here, but he's very open and willing to sit down and listen and answer questions. So I wouldn't hesitate to reach out to him or to any of us as well. So the school committee does have several other agenda items this evening, so I will let the various boards adjourn yourselves, and school committee meeting will continue after a quick break.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn. Favor?
so simple. To listen to that was like heart-wrenching. And I'm still seeing faces of people who are too. Are we all back? Like asked them before.
All right, we are back. Thank you, everybody. Needed to let my laptop recharge a little bit because it was basically about to shut off. So we are going to move on to the recommendation for the Communications Subcommittee. We're going to hold the recognition until our next meeting on the 6th. So in the packet, I made a recommendation for the membership on this committee, and this is similar to when we reorganized in May. Our policy for subcommittees basically says that the chair makes recommendations for the membership, and then that recommendation is discussed and voted upon among the whole membership. So that's why that recommendation is in there. It's no different than the recommendations for policy or BNF or CIAA. It's just happening now as opposed to in May because we didn't have the communications subcommittee in May. So I had recommended for membership Ro, Christina, and myself, basically looking at who has what in terms of their other commitments and responsibilities and assignments. I felt that both Ro and Christina, if they were willing to, had the ability to take on an additional liaison or subcommittee assignment, as well as they are the two most recently joined members of the school committee, and therefore they it's freshest in their mind what it is like to kind of just be a community member as opposed to a school committee member, and so they may have some unique perspectives on, the style and format and so on of our communications and how to do that. And then myself, I think that as chair, whoever is sitting as chair really should be on the communications subcommittee because they are primarily the ones that are responding to inquiries or communicating with the public on behalf of the committee. That being said, my expectation for the subcommittee would be that they would be managing things and organizing things, but they're not the only ones that are participating in communications. So as we discussed last time, we will be having monthly office hours. Any of us are able to participate in that. There's many other opportunities to engage in communications consistently and frequently with the community. So I don't want people to take away from this that if you're not on the subcommittee, it means you're not part of the communication plan, because really all of us have a part to play there in communicating with the community. So with that, I will open it up for discussion on this. If anybody has questions or comments or wants to make an additional recommendation.
I think that it's, I personally support that. I think that, like you said, I think Christina and Ro are both relatively new to the school committee. And I also think that they have the ability to articulate and really communicate effectively with community members. So for those reasons, I support that.
Okay.
Lacey?
Yes.
Can I say something?
Yeah, of course.
Thanks. So I would be happy to serve on that subcommittee, and I feel like one of the big things that I talked a lot about in the spring, and one of the reasons I was interested in becoming a school committee member was to have more engagement with the community and really more effectively communicate with our community, and I feel like this would give me an opportunity to follow through on that, and so I appreciate the recommendation. I would do it happily.
Okay, thank you. Actually, that's a good point. I really should have checked with you guys. So, Ro, how do you feel?
Surprise! I couldn't have communicated it any better than Christina. I'm good. Okay.
Great. Yes. All All right, so with that then, I would entertain a motion to accept the chair's recommendation for the membership on the communications subcommittee.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Ro?
Yes.
Rosanna?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Yasmin?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
And Christina?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. I would ask that if we could try to schedule a meeting, we could do it over Zoom, but it would be great if we could get that scheduled maybe for next week, because I do think that we have a lot of things that we want to get moving on, not the least of which is what was just discussed at the meeting a few minutes ago. So I will communicate with you guys on trying to put that together. Moving on to liaison reports.
CIAA met today, this evening actually, and Kristen and Dr. Bruno were present, and they did a beautiful delivery of information. This is our second meeting, right? I think our second meeting, third. And so Kristen was reviewing what the curriculum review process would be, and looking at piloting, beginning to pilot information in January, but it will be coming to school committee prior to that. One of the nice things too is she and Dr. Bruno have been doing a lot of community work around architects of belonging, and so at the beginning of the year they emphasized the focus on belonging of all students and what the practices look like, and there's 8, what do we want to call them, Kristen? 8 best practices, thank you. In addition, Kristen and her team, every 2 weeks she's updating the principals around what some of those best practices are looking like, and how they are materializing in real time, which is really nice. And all of us were very excited. On November 5th, they're going to have professional development and learning initiative, and it's looking at best practices, roundtables, work-life balance for the staff. So it's really quite comprehensive. And I think there was much more, but that probably sums it up for right now. Yep. And as far as Council on Aging, I have met with the director and met with her again recently. So we've been looking at some initiatives, some things. I want to say, I'm having a moment. Thank you. We're looking at doing things like maybe pen pals, seeing about maybe some of the Council on Aging residents being able to come out to the schools and read to students, try to tie it into curriculum, so things that are more focused. We talked about, and then Dr. Bruno and yourself, Lacey, about doing some sort of like a senior supper or just some initiative to bring members out. And we were also talking about the possibility of like a fall cleanup. There are a lot of seniors that don't have either the physical stamina or the resources to be able to do that. So just trying to being able to get students out to kind of build that repertoire back and forth. So we're continuing to kind of develop those ideas, and more to come.
Wonderful, thank you. Just a quick one for me. We are doing Groton office hours tomorrow. Rosanna and I will be at the library from 4 to 5:30. Going forward, we will be posting the schedule for office hours so that residents have the opportunity to kind of plan ahead. But they will be in both towns every month, and they will alternate. We'll do like a morning, like this week we did a morning in Dunstable. We'll do evening in Groton. Next month it will be the reverse of that. So hopefully, if folks want to, if they have a question or concern that they want to discuss, they will come on in and see us.
Lacey? Sorry.
Yes. Oh, Lori.
I'm hiding over here. Tomorrow night, CPAC is offering a post-secondary transition planning workshop, both in person here in the central office conference room and also via Zoom. Jessica Barkley Woods, who is a Groton Dunstable special education teacher and transition specialist, is offering this workshop. It's not just for families who are in the middle of transition planning approaching age 18, it's also for families of younger students who just to see what different things they should be aware of looking ahead. So if anybody's interested, you can find information on our website as well as some of the posts and flyers on Facebook.
Great, thank you. Yep.
Lacey, would you mention the Marion Stoddard program on Friday, please?
Yes. Yeah. So on Friday here, from 3 to 5:30, there will be an event to honor Marion Stoddard. As everyone knows, we recently renamed this building that we're in right now after Marion. It is now the Marion Stoddard building. So there will be the opportunity to come in, to see a brief film about Marion's work. There will be several dignitaries here. Senator Cronin, Senator Eldridge, Rep. Scarsdale, Senator Kennedy will all be in attendance. Marion herself will be here. And it will be just a really great community event. Did you want to add anything?
Just they can see the plaque. I think the plaque will be.
Yes,
Yep.
the plaque I think was installed today, so people can come and see that. It's beautiful, and really a great addition to that front hall. Okay, anybody else? Catherine?
Yeah, we did have a DEI kind of meet. The co-chair might give you more information. Kristen?
It does want to focus.
It was a learning curve. It was a learning curve. It was a formative assessment just then. Nice job. So yes, at our DEI meeting most recently, we talked about, we didn't end up having a quorum, which was unfortunate, but we were able to talk about, not make any decisions, but talk about what kinds of groups we would be working in. And I'm happy to say that those groups are going to be concentrating on 3 different things. The first will be initiatives inside of the district. What kinds of things are we doing to make sure we're addressing diversity, equity, and inclusion within the schools? There will be a second group, which I like to call the cross-pollination group, which means they are going to be talking about how the school can partner with areas in the community around diversity, equity, and inclusion, including the other schools in the community and the town's different initiatives around DEI. And then the third group will be working on being really the liaison to the policy subcommittee, the CIAA subcommittee, and the budget subcommittee. So we look forward to having our next meeting around getting those groups up and running and starting to have an agenda around what those groups will work on. In addition to that, the co-chair, Brian DiGiovanni, and the vice chair, Raquel Majewski, and I, along with Jessica Durling, will be meeting actually on Halloween to plan that next meeting. So it's been really a nice flow between a meeting with the whole entire committee and then a smaller meeting with the officers of the committee to make sure we're moving forward at a good pace.
I had one more thing, Lacey. This is kind of just as an aside. I'm part of the Sustainability Groton, and on the 2nd of November at the Council on Aging, there will be a advocacy meetup, and looking to kind of bring new advocates into the sustainability. So to come and learn about what it means to be an advocate in the community, and potentially get a certificate and a flag, something that you would place on your lawn, and more to come.
Great. Kristen, on the DEI, do you think that at one of the November meetings we could expect like some kind of a reporting schedule? Okay, great. Thank you. All right. If there are no other liaison reports, is there new business? Okay. I will put this out there in case either of our two attendees in the audience have any public comment? We moved it to the end this evening just because we had the boards here to start the meeting. So if anybody has public comment, I don't see any. So with that, I will call the meeting adjourned. Thank you.